Who spends his lunch eating so much fancy cheese and imported Kobe beef that he gave himself gout? Who tours military production facilities surrounded by tanks, then chugs expensive imported whiskey and smokes fancy French cigarettes while ordering mass executions? Who invites former American basketball stars to his massive palace when he's not spending his evening being serenaded by his own personal girl group? This would only be an average day for Kim Jong Un. Since being sworn in back in 2011 as the new head of the country's ruling dynasty, Kim Jong Un has reigned as supreme leader of North Korea for over a decade. In that time, the man has garnered a reputation as one of the most fearsome, powerful, and controversial figures on the world stage, thanks to his totalitarian regime, ongoing tensions with the United States, Japan, and of course South Korea, and the constant fear over his access to nuclear weapons. His tenure in his position of power is characterized by his ruthless consolidation of power and a dramatic, unsettling acceleration of the country's nuclear weapons program. And yet, despite his high profile, there's very little that's actually known about Kim Jong-un's personal day-to-day life. Just what does somebody do when they've got all that time, money, and power at their disposal? Well, we'd be willing to bet that he probably doesn't spend all of his time wandering around the halls of his palace and singing about how lonely he is, like his dad used to. And that's about the only Team America joke we can get away with here on YouTube. Joking aside, we've scoured our way through the reports about the secretive lifestyle of North Korea's diabolical dictator to find out just what goes on in a day in the life of Kim Jong-un. Now, not everyone's a morning person, but we would imagine that having to live your life with the near constant threat of assassination attempts would be enough to keep even the toughest person awake at night. It's been long reported that Kim Jong-un has often struggled with insomnia, brought on by the stress of his position and the dangers it also brings. Having all that power might sound like a safe and secure position to hold, but it brings with it plenty of potential threats to his life. Due to this, he's thought to have a somewhat erratic sleep pattern, not waking up at a regular time each morning. Instead, the time he gets up is likely subject to change depending on what was occupying his time the previous day. Most of us start our mornings with a warm cup of coffee, and it's possible that Kim Jong-un is no exception to that. It's been reported that Kim often starts his day with Brazilian coffee, which is considerably more expensive. Brazil is the largest coffee-producing country in the world, and a high quantity of their coffee is imported into North Korea, an estimated $900,000 worth of it in a year. However, this coffee isn't for everyone, and it's hoarded for Kim Jong-un and his staff. Sadly, it's not a luxury the people of North Korea can afford, given that around 60% of citizens are living well below the poverty line, all thanks to Kim's totalitarian regime. It's been speculated that exercise doesn't play much of a part in Kim Jong-un's daily routine, unless you count exercising his dictatorial power over his country. He also doesn't seem to have the diet of a person who's all that conscious about his health. There's even been intelligence gathered by South Korea that implies Kim Jong-un might actually be obese, if you couldn't tell by just looking at the guy, as well as suffering from high blood pressure and diabetes. He's known to be fonder of richer, more indulgent foods over those that are more nutritious. For example, Supreme Leader is particularly fond of Emmental cheese, possibly stemming from his time as a student in Switzerland at the International School of Bern. That's right, Kim was schooled in Switzerland under a fake name so he could receive a first-rate education. Strangely, he was actually described as a good student, being shy but polite, and being an extremely ardent fan of basketball, particularly Michael Jordan. Kim's basketball obsession has never faded and will come out in a particularly strange way later. In 2009, an alleged school friend of Kim's came forward to the Washington Post with more details of Kim's day-to-day activities during his student years. According to the friend, young Kim enjoyed doodling, mainly sketching members of the Chicago Bulls, his favorite basketball team, and he was an ardent gamer. He was also a big fan of Jackie Chan's kung fu movies. We have no idea whether he keeps up with Mr. Chan's filmography to this day or if he still plays computer games, but we know he never stopped eating like a particularly gluttonous Swiss. It is possibly even thanks to his indulgent diet that Kim Jong-un may have developed gout. While hearing that word might immediately call to mind mental images of disease-ridden medieval England, gout is actually a form of arthritis that's still somewhat common. In fact, in the US, cases of gout have increased over the past 20 years, to the point where it affects around 3% of the population. It's caused by a buildup of uric acid in the body, which has been linked to weight gain, particularly from consuming richer foods. Saltier fish can contribute to this, and wouldn't you know, old Kim Jong is a big fan of sushi. A regular part of Kim's diet is a special sushi made from tuna, which is high in fat, as well as shark fin soup. While this is considered to be something of a delicacy in parts of the world, shark fin soup also contributes to declining shark populations thanks to the hunting involved, threatening to drive certain species toward extinction. So it's not just other humans that Kim's daily routine has been killing. Kim Jong Un has also been known to order top-quality pork all the way from Denmark, caviar he's had delivered from Iran, Chinese melon, and steaks of Kobe beef, a delicacy from Japan. Kim spares no expense when it comes to feeding himself and his inner circle with the best cuisine from around the world. While it's not known exactly how much he spends on food, the total is estimated to be in the millions. Just like the millions of North Korean citizens struggling to gain access to healthy, nutritious sources of food, while their supreme leader enjoys so many extravagant dishes that it's affecting his health. Speaking of his health, excessive alcohol intake is another factor that might have also contributed to developing gout. Sure enough, Kim Jong-un is partial to a lot of expensive liquors, reportedly spending the equivalent of $30 million on importing some of the most luxury brands for him and his inner circle. He's believed to be fond of higher-end brands of whiskey and cognac, like the famously smooth Hennessy, the more expensive bottles of which can run up to over $2,000 in the United States. Some of his other favorites reportedly include vodka imported directly from Russia, champagne, and perhaps most bizarrely, snake wine. Originating from China, this strange beverage is produced by infusing rice wine or grain alcohol with an entire snake. Only the best for the supreme leader. Kim Jong-un's penchant for knocking back a few glasses of the hard stuff seems to have only increased in recent years. In 2023, he turned 39, and this apparently brought with it a wave of concern over his worsening health and rapid approach to the dreaded 40, turning 40. While he's drinking a lot because of a midlife crisis or not, Kim Jong-un has long been thought to be something of a party animal, staying up all night drinking just like his dad, who also had gout, as did Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-un's grandfather, and the founder of North Korea. Kim's older brother Kim Jong-nam also suffered from gout. But despite his many health concerns, Kim Jong-un has an entire team of scientists on hand who are dedicated to finding ways to extend his lifespan. According to a researcher named Hae-nong-soo Kim, who fled from North Korea, Kim Jong-un has a team of medics continuously looking into ways to keep the dictator healthy, despite his indulgent lifestyle. The Longevity Institute was established specifically for this purpose, with the goal of finding a way to circumvent or prevent the symptoms of the cardiovascular and diabetic problems brought on by the supreme leader's unhealthy diet. Unfortunately for those working at the institute, finding other obese people in North Korea to conduct studies on is difficult, given that most of the population is malnourished. It's also worth pointing out that you probably don't need to be a scientist to tell Kim Jong-un that the solution to his problems is probably more sleep and less fancy cheese and expensive booze, though you'd probably end up in a forced labor camp just for pointing that out. Back to his routine, and after what's likely an indulgent and lavish breakfast, Kim Jong-un's morning activities typically include a series of orchestrated visits to munition factories, naval shipyards, and other industrial centers that bolster North Korea's military strength. These visits are all a facet of a widespread propaganda campaign that's engulfed the country, specifically designed to portray Kim as a leader who deeply cares about the ordinary working people of North Korea. But if his life of luxury compared to the abject suffering and struggles of the people says anything, it portrays how much he actually cares about Korean citizens, which is to say not a lot. Still, his carefully crafted image is intended to boost the general opinion of Kim Jong-un amongst the people of North Korea, as well as to further uphold the country's nationalistic ideals. If you want an idea as to how insidious the propaganda of North Korea is, you need to look out across the demilitarized zone separating it from South Korea. There, you'll see Kijongdong, a seemingly idyllic village that is intentionally made to look appealing to those in the South in an attempt to persuade them to defect to North Korea. Kim Jong Un even called for a new propaganda campaign in 2022 amid North Korea's economic struggles as a way to boost morale, or more likely to bolster his own independent and militaristic goals for the country with the aid of the Workers' Party Congress. Officials in Pyongyang even restrict foreign visitors and journalists from taking photos within North Korea, intentionally turning international attention away from the inherent bleakness of a country where so many are living in poverty. Not the supreme leader, though. Here's an example of propaganda intersecting with Kim Jong-un's lavish way of living. According to some North Korean school textbooks, Kim was a child prodigy who learned to drive at the age of only 3 years old. While that seems highly unlikely, what is undoubtedly true is that he owns an extensive garage of luxury cars. Vehicles like this aren't typically imported to North Korea, but Kim Jong-un has the resources to get his hands on a number of high-end cars. His favorite brands include Mercedes-Benz and BMWs, and he apparently owns up to 100 cars. It is actually illegal for citizens of North Korea to freely travel around the country or leave on international flights without express approval of Kim Jong-un's government. Many have braved this capital offense and even risked death for themselves and their families in order to defect to South Korea. Meanwhile, Kim Jong-un himself is often seen being ferried around in luxury limos, driving him to his various public appearances. Given his prominent status, being able to appear at his various propaganda visits means that Kim relies heavily on a tight-knit security detail, having his very own equivalent of the Secret Service at his disposal. However, his security also has rather specific criteria that they have to meet in order to protect the supreme leader. His bodyguards must be no taller than 5 feet 5 inches tall, the same height as Kim himself. This is so as to not make the supreme leader look, well, not so supreme. If he appears to be shorter or in any way physically inferior or less imposing than his security detail, then it undermines his image as a powerful and indomitable leader. And of course, having a lot of firepower certainly helps reinforce that image too. Kim Jong-un is normally escorted by several large armored tanks mounted with machine guns to protect him from potential threats whenever he's out in the open, as well as offering substantial firepower. Having military vehicles in his presence also serves to emphasize Kim Jong-un's goal of building a powerful military force in the face of what he considers to be hostile policies from the United States and other nations around the world. Kim has often clung to a lot of these same policies that his father promoted, including a strategy of promoting North Korea's isolation and independence from the rest of the world, building its own strength by expanding its nuclear weapons program. Although Kim Jong-un has often emphasized that the growing number of weapons in North Korea are intended to defend the country, not start a war. Still, it's always unsettling seeing anyone surrounded by tanks and trucks showing off his latest missiles. Whenever he heads off on international visits, Kim Jong-un's security measures only increase. He's often been known to make use of not just 1 but 3 separate planes, with 2 of them acting as decoys to avoid the risk of anyone knowing exactly where he's due to arrive at any given time. This meticulous approach to staying safe, the heightened security and secrecy surrounding him, seem to give the impression of someone who is both powerful and paranoid, possibly expecting some form of retaliation against him for his treatment of his citizens. Fear of being assassinated doesn't seem to stop Kim from using his power to lead a frivolous lifestyle. Whenever he's taking brief breaks from his oh-so-busy schedule, Kim Jong-un can sometimes be found aboard his custom-designed yacht. Owning a yacht is a pipe dream for most ordinary people around the world, with hardly any of us ever achieving the wealth required to buy even a lower-end kind of boat. For those impoverished in North Korea, the likelihood of owning a yacht is even further away. And yet, Kim Jong-un has a 200-foot-long yacht worth between $7 and $8 million US. Its nickname? Princess. How adorable. Once again, evidencing Kim's indulgent lifestyle, it's been speculated that he could easily afford a larger vessel, given the estimated equivalent of $5 billion at his disposal. But he's apparently grown attached to the familiarity and the comfort provided by his top-of-the-line yacht, his little princess, if you will. Of course, being on the water can get a little boring, but luckily for the Supreme Leader, he can always spend his downtime at the Masikryong ski resort. This $35 million resort was developed at the behest of Kim Jong Un in order to drive up tourism in North Korea and increase the amount of foreign visitors. Because who wouldn't want a vacation in a place that has skiing and human rights violations? Located on the summit of Taewa Peak, Masikryong Ski Resort was constructed in just 10 short months. While it was intended to drum up interest from tourists, a potential additional motivating factor is that Kim himself is supposedly a big fan of the sport. He even described the resort as impeccable, boasting several wood cabin rooms, a spa, a restaurant, and a combined 110 kilometers of slopes. However, despite all the amenities on offer, Masikryong Ski Resort is reportedly mostly unused and is kept open by armies of workers including men, women, and most worryingly, children. Providing skiing or yachting doesn't take up too much of his time, Kim might still have room in the day to oversee some of his political dealings. For example, orchestrating executions. Kim Jong Un has ordered the deaths of over 340 people since he came to power in 2011, using a variety of methods, including the alleged use of anti-aircraft guns and even flamethrowers. Seemingly nobody is safe from his brutal forms of capital punishment, including members of his own family. Both Kim Jong-un's uncle and his half-brother were executed at the Supreme Leader's behest. Jang Song-thaek, Kim's uncle, was branded as a traitor and accused of a litany of crimes, from plotting to overthrow the state to introducing disastrous reforms of North Korea's currency. Jang had married into the first family following the wedding to Kim Kyung-hui, one of Kim Jong-il's sisters. Although he had aided Kim Jong-un in cementing his authority, Jang was reportedly a reformist who felt North Korea should open its doors to the world. Following a military tribunal, Jang was stripped of his role within North Korea's Workers' Party and then put to death. Some rumors even indicate that Jang's headless body was shown to other North Korean officials, with his head sitting on the body's chest. However, that rumor comes from the mouth of former president and occasional Kim Jong-un admirer Donald Trump, so take it with a grain of salt. The assassination of Kim Jong-nam has been more widely reported on, given that it occurred at an airport in Malaysia, not on North Korean soil. Kim Jong-nam had for a time been reported to be the favored successor to Kim Jong-il, but seemingly fell out of favor and was exiled in 2003. In 2017, he was approached by two women at Kuala Lumpur International Airport who threw a liquid into his face. This was actually a VX nerve agent that killed Kim Jong-nam in approximately 15 minutes. According to reports, the two women, Siti Aisyah from Indonesia and Duan Thi Hong from Vietnam, were approached by North Korean agents who misled the pair of them into believing that they were taking part in a TV prank show, and then told to throw the nerve agent at Kim Jong-nam. While these two women subsequently had the charges of murder dropped, it is widely believed that Kim Jong-nam was intentionally murdered at the behest of his half-brother, Kim Jong-un. After a busy day of being the face of a propaganda campaign, enjoying expensive foods, ordering assassinations, Kim Jong-un must no doubt get exhausted. So he likes to unwind. And what better way to do that than at his own personal indoor movie theater? Boasting a 1,000-seat capacity, the Supreme Leader probably puts his feet up and maybe even enjoys a cigarette while he watches a movie. While he's rumored to be a heavy smoker, Kim is hardly likely to buy just any old cigarettes from behind some store counter. Ever one for the finer things in life, Kim Jong-un reportedly smokes the variety produced by French designer Yves Saint Laurent that costs $44 a pack here in the US. As for what Kim likes watching, he apparently is a fan of Godzilla movies, as well as a follower of the NBA. See, we told you we'd come back to it. Kim's enduring love for basketball is evidenced by Kim Jong-un's surprising friendship with former NBA star Dennis Rodman. Kim has invited Rodman to Pyongyang multiple times, and the basketball player even has sang happy birthday to the dictator on the court. According to the former Chicago Bulls player, who's described himself as a friend for life of the Supreme Leader, Kim Jong Un also makes occasional retreats to his own private luxury island, similar to places like Ibiza or Hawaii. Oh, he also gifted Kim with a copy of The Art of the Deal by, yep, here he is again, Donald Trump. When he's not hanging out in the company of disgraced former basketball players, Kim has a group of women taken from classrooms across North Korea to keep him company. For entertainment, he also has his own hand-picked all-girl pop band called the Moran Bong Band. Known for their hits like their debut song, Do Prosper Era of the Workers' Party, it'll sweep the funky house scene any day now. Despite its associations with the Western world, Kim Jong-un also apparently has a fondness for Disney movies. Seen enamored with costumed versions of Tigger and Minnie Mouse that appeared in a musical on state-run television, which also featured early Disney animated classics like Dumbo and Snow White playing on a screen in the background. Then, at the end of the day, Kim Jong-un returns to his palace, which spans over 4.5 miles and contains an Olympic-sized swimming pool, a shooting range, and even a water slide. As ever, his luxury lifestyle contrasts with the lives of ordinary North Korean people who struggle to feed their families, while the supreme leader spends his evenings partying and feasting on more expensive food. It's worth remembering exactly why Kim Jong-un is so famous, or rather infamous, around the world. Some of these sparse details about his secretive life can make him seem like an outlandish figure, but he's still the dictator of an entire country, not just another celebrity with an extravagant lifestyle. We're still pretty curious about that snake wine, though.